Calling to order the 200th meeting of the Equal Employment Practices Commission. Might I have a vote on the approval of the minutes of the meeting of February 4th, 2016?
I will that we approve the minutes of, what date?
February 4th.
February 4th, 2016.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you very much. It looks like in the audit status report, we have 23 agencies. I am not going to read them over. I would lose my voice going through all of them, but it is a rather interesting and full group of city units, and so I thank you very much for that. And as to the two agencies that requested an extension, the Bronx County and the Richmond County District Attorney's Office, I assume we have granted those extensions.
Correct.
Okay.
They are still on the audit plan, but they will take place later on this year.
Okay, and so it looks like we once more are fairly close to meeting what are the numbers of agencies that we are supposed to annually report on under the charter. And so for that, I commend you once more, Executive Director, on the wonderful work you've been doing. It's been any number of years now under your great leadership that we have been meeting our numbers. So thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Thank you. I just want to say about the agencies that are under audit. We started, we're using a different technique. We started a lot of agencies. We sent the letters out in December so that we can, so that they can complete compliance by the end of this year.
Right.
So if no one requests, if no agency requests an extension, we should be able to have these 23 agencies in addition to the ones that are currently in compliance, complete compliance by the end of this year.
Wow.
Terrific.
Incredible.
So let's just
Cross our
That would
fingers.
be wonderful,
Yes.
yeah. Incredible.
But then, of course, once you made a new standard, you have to meet it next year. Be careful what you do, my dear.
True. Since the compliance monitoring periods are taking a little bit longer, we decided that we would try this strategy so that they can have a little bit more than the 6 months to go through compliance in case they need extension.
That's good.
Okay,
Give
good.
enough.
Okay. Next on the agenda that you have given me is the report on the status of audit compliance monitoring. Anything within that? We're supposed to vote on that. So,
You want to do the report on the compliance?
To report on the status of the audit?
no,
No,
the first
but
thing is voting, so why don't we have the vote on all of them? I'm looking for an approval of resolution 2016/99AC-01 for the New York City Economic Development Corporation, 2016/126C-02 for the Office of Payroll Administration, 2016/806C-03 for HPD, 2016/019C-04 for OMB, 2016/004C-05 for the Campaign Finance Board, 2016/86OC-06 for DOIT, the Department of Records and Information Services. No, I'm sorry, Department of Records and Information Services, and 2016/102C-07 for the New York City Council. I want to thank our Executive Director and our two commissioners appointed by the City Council for their aid in finally ending this long saga. But thank you very much.
Incredible.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second?
And all in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Okay. All of those now have been approved. All those resolutions have been approved. Okay. Thank you once more. I didn't think I would live to see the day that the City Council came through.
Right.
It's true.
Good job. I think you guys have.
Yeah, thanks both of you.
Yes.
Both of you. Now, we're up to the report on the status of compliance monitoring. The agencies that are currently in compliance monitoring is city planning, landmarks, teachers' retirement, Board of Correction, and the Fire Department.
Okay.
So,
I'll
what
do-
would you like to report, Executive Director, or do you want to
Oh,
report?
Director of Compliance.
There are, what, we just read the list, there are 5 agencies currently undergoing compliance monitoring. I'll just start with the monitoring period that should end next month, which is the Landmarks Preservation Commission and the Department of City Planning. They're both on schedule, and I believe that they'll finish by the end of the compliance monitoring period. The next one, they end in May 2016, which is the teachers' retirement system. They received an extension because they're having some internal personnel issues, but they're still working towards implementing the corrective action, so there are no issues there. It's just a process of them getting through each corrective action. And Board of Correction is actually ahead of schedule, so they'll probably finish next month. And the last one is the Fire Department. They're steadily working towards giving us a plan to address underutilized titles, so that's where they are in the compliance monitoring period. And they have to, I guess, go through their unions to approve performance evaluations. So those are the remaining corrective actions that they're working on for the next month.
It seems to me that we really ought to look at their underutilization very closely, and look at what they have given you, what the DCAS numbers are, and what, whether or not you can find out anything more substantively as to why the underutilization exists.
That's part of the compliance monitoring period. They have to give us the list of the job groups that are currently underutilized, and then identify the titles within those job groups, and then give us a plan to address each and every job group that are underutilized, and give us recruitment sources, as well as, even if they're not hiring, submit a plan that has a directive to their hiring managers that they're going to use this plan for the next, hiring season. So.
Okay. Well, yeah, all right. Any questions of any, do you have any further questions?
Interesting. A lot of work.
Okay, new business.
EPC annual report. The annual report is ready. I know you guys just got it and probably need some time to look at it. But what I also sent the report that we are going to issue as sort of an appendix to the annual report. It's called Commitment to Achieving Diversity.
Yep.
And it summarizes the public hearing, the polls that the EPC did for the city's EEO and HR professionals, and we looked at all of the corrective actions that the EPC has issued with regard to recruiting, hiring, and promoting since its inception. Then we looked at the frequency that they occurred. I think the bulk of the corrective actions occurred within the last 3 audit cycles, which was in the past 12 years. So we looked at how many times agencies initially got a corrective action pertaining to recruiting, hiring, and promoting, and then how many times they got it again, which told us whether or not the agencies are improving. And we also looked at, we compared whether we took the corrective action and compared whether or not DCAS has a standard. And we looked at whether or not agency, if DCAS is doing anything with regard to the corrective action citywide, and then whether or not agencies are just having a lapse in implementing it, or whether or not there's already a policy in place citywide. So.
Did
it
you
was
find any repeaters?
agencies?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but what we did is, we didn't wanna focus on the agencies because we thought that would, it would skew the subject matter. We're looking at the issues rather than how many agencies got it. So if a preponderance, I guess, of agencies receive corrective actions on an issue, then we looked to see whether or not there was a citywide policy around that issue.
That's great.
Right, which to me, that's really the deal for us, because then we would be looking, if there wasn't a policy, on whether or not we can create or recommend a policy around that issue.
Right.
So it was a lot of work. I know people in here wanna kill me. But
What
I
else
think we
is
came
new?
up with a good report, and this, in actuality, I think DCAS actually has a policy around most
That's
of the issues.
Yeah.
And so, the way I kind of framed it was, if DCAS had a policy around that issue, then it would either be, there's a lapse in implementation at the agency level. Maybe they implement it when we're there in the compliance period, and then they don't implement it until we come back. Or there's some limitation that's there at the agency level.
Or there may be some piece of the policy that needs to be perhaps fixed or made better, or because it's not being implemented. There must be some,
Right.
you have to look at the policy itself to see whether or not it could be part of the issue.
Right, there's something happening at the agency level, and that's why we did the polls.
Right,
So the polls tell us the EEO officer and the HR officer's responsibility or role in implementing the policies. And so whatever we could glean from the polls, we did, and we incorporated it into the report. So at this stage, what we did was we gave DCAS the report so that they can provide some feedback before we make it final, because we think it's fair for them to be able to either provide feedback. We had, I think, maybe about 4 or 5 questions in there that they could provide clarity on about whether or not they're, I think one of them was, whether or not they're, one of them had to do with validating testing.
are you
I
gonna
know.
go back to DCAS before you issue this as part of your annual report? To have them respond to your questions?
Yes, that's
And
what we
incorporate
did,
it, yes.
yes. So, they submitted their
Response?
informal response, last night.
Okay,
And so, I have it here and we'll go through it, but, I spoke with the chief diversity officer. And I think by probably next week is when we'll be able to finalize it, and then I'll give the commissioners the final report. But overall, it's not, it's factual. There's nothing that's too, I guess, offensive in it, or it's not really, it's not just an evaluation of
It's
the
not
agencies
controversial.
and the DCAS, right? And before I submitted it to DCAS, I invited the chief, diversity officer over here, or the deputy commissioner for EEO and diversity, I think that's his title. And we actually met, and I showed him the report, and we talked about it, and then I was able to submit it to him so that he can provide feedback. So I think it's gonna be a really good report.
You sent the annual report and the supplemental report electronically to us?
Yes.
I might have missed that, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't either.
It's because it's in the packet with the commission
Today.
meetings.
Oh, it was for this.
part of
one?
today,
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
it's part of
Okay.
today, yeah. No, I
Yeah,
too have not read it, but I'm aware it's there.
you responded to it. I think you had 1 or 2 questions about it.
I did? No,
Was it that? You asked something about, oh, no, you were asking about something about the agenda. Okay.
yes, thank you.
But so, if you guys wanna review it and,
We probably do.
but you're gonna get it again when I
Mhm,
incorporate the feedback.
I have a question about it. So who's the target audience for the report?
That's a good question.
Mhm.
Anybody that reads our annual report. We're gonna distribute it to the EEO officers, the HR personnel, the city council, because they
Yeah.
asked for it.
How about the leader?
And we're gonna put it on our website also with a link to the
How
public.
about the leader, but within the leader, because that's the newspaper that goes out to city employees about jobs and what's going on in the city. How about somebody writes a press release or a 1-page executive summary and then sends it out to the leader?
Okay, we
And
can
how
do
about
whatever you guys
Cranes?
want us to do.
Guys, how about
It's a good
Cranes?
idea, though.
The same thing for cranes.
Yeah, that's completely going to what my point was, right? So figuring out who the target audience is, I think that it's wonderful to have created this report. You all did a lot of work around it, so we should try to figure out what's a strategy for who we want to actually read it.
Okay.
And who we want to access it, and there might be some particular places that it should go and other places that we might have contacts to in order to make sure that it gets there.
So I just want you
We have
guys to,
a commissioner who would have access to New York One, and it would make some sense. Well, there is one of us around this table who has access, but it seems to me it makes some sense to have a discussion, and you can, in order to make your next opportunity to testify in front of the city council more robust, it would be nice to have people with greater knowledge of not only what we do, but what we have found out about city improvement in achieving diversity, which I think is what this talks to.
Yeah.
And so I'm not suggesting it's high discussion, but at some point on a slow news day, this is something, this is meat that you could deal with. But in order to do that, I'm back to my need for an executive summary and my need for, within that executive summary, figuring out where in it has the meat that someone could have a discussion about.
right. Also, I just wanted
That's
to.
another way of, I'm sort of echoing Commissioner Rice, but it's really another way of who's your target audience.
Okay, so this is the beginning of what I think is going to be a series in this, I guess, umbrella of
Public meeting.
entitled Commitment to Achieving Diversity. Because those corrective actions that we analyzed were dealing with recruiting, hiring, and promoting, but we're gonna go back and do it for every segment of the EPC audits, which I think we have about 8 segments in an audit. We have, yes, subject areas, we have discrimination complaints, we have reasonable accommodations and accessibility. So we'll do
But
it
there's
for
one
every
that's
single
missing,
one.
which was part of the discussion, and I remember myself being in somewhat opposition to it, finding that as the door was opening with a better understanding of the word called access. And it's a rather subtle access. It's the reason that some people, for a long time, women didn't apply to law school. Women didn't apply to medical school because their own sense was it wasn't going to be hospitable. And even if they got through the process of becoming a lawyer, there weren't going to be any jobs out there for them. And so they didn't go through the door, they didn't go through the portal, they didn't begin the study because there was a sense inevitable that they wouldn't get anywhere if they did it. So the issue of access and what is an understanding of access for someone who is of color or female who wants to be an architect, or someone of color or a female who wants to be a police person or a fire person or a sanitation person, we go through the list of them. Is it a misunderstanding of how this field is open? Now, I don't know how we can get to it, but I think that's a piece, because that's certainly what the professor whose name eludes me, coming from the college in New Jersey, was talking about. Access. I mean, I don't, somehow the law schools have gotten over a piece of it, but, and the practice of law, but there are other places out there that haven't.
So you're proposing that we measure access?
Or try to find a way of dealing with access.
That's all we do.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
That's what's, yeah.
And I think like the things that you're talking about are a little bit more subtle
Yes.
and important, but it's very hard to measure and implement certain things from this sort of, I would say, macro level that this commission is trying to, this agency is trying to do. So I feel like, I think there's a lot here that our agency is already dealing with, and that hopefully over time we're measuring, we're getting to that, but it's, I think it's difficult at this level.
Yeah.
And I think that the law school and all this stuff, that was greatly aided by affirmative action policies, right? Like that's that's the reason why schools are now more than 50% female and et cetera, et cetera. But I think like,
It's like Title IX in sports, right?
exactly,
Right.
like it's,
This law
it was a
created
law,
this
it
impact.
doesn't matter what you
Yeah.
think, you're
Yeah.
gonna do it. But I do think it's important, I think it's very sort of difficult to.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Well,
Yes.
I think what we're doing is tantamount to measuring access.
Mm-hmm.
Every little piece of
Yeah,
what we do
yeah,
is
right.
just,
Right.
right, there are little silos because
Yes.
there's areas that we have to go into that kind of make up the overall.
I mean, what's the key is the
The
underrepresentation,
overall
when you're looking at who's underrepresented, then you start to drill down, like, where are you, you know, posting your app, like, there's a lot of stuff.
Right,
there. And I think we're getting to that.
Yeah.
I think so.
So, like I said, it's all gonna, I think it's all gonna be, we're gonna continue this theme and we'll have little pieces in the theme, but I think we can produce many reports as a continuation of the theme, commitment to achieving goals.
Does it lead to your next public hearing? I mean, your next
Of course.
conference, okay, and so when do you think you're gonna be able to do that?
Probably next year.
Okay, so you're gonna need a
I'm
whole,
thinking probably every 2 years.
That's great.
okay, that's fine. I just
Sounds
wanted to
fine.
know where we were in a plan, because I think it was incredibly successful.
Everybody liked it, everybody asked, what are we kind of
Oh,
gonna
that's
Great,
great.
that's great.
do? Right,
Yeah,
so.
that's terrific.
Great content, great
Good.
assignments.
No, it's just, again, it gives you, the ability to have something as a report, it gives you the ability to go out and be known and continue to have the work be known and look for having greater publicity about it and greater coverage about it, so it all builds on the piece that needs to be built on, that we, one, exist, that we do good work, and that we're really helping to make this an equal employment for the city workforce.
Right. Okay.
Did you want to report on the city council testimony? For the record.
Well, for the record, I could say that we had two hearings a week apart that we had to prepare for. One was the budget hearing. In the budget hearing, I didn't ask for anything, but since then, I have submitted a plan to OMB to convert 2 remaining titles, to enhance them, I would say. I think we need some kind of tech person, so I enhanced one of the titles to include, I enhanced it in justification so that we can get the tech title on board. And also, another mid-level research person, because I think that is where the EPC is going, pretty much.
What happens if the legislation comes to pass and you have to annually look at physical standards?
I think
Don't you need another human being to do that?
we
with a
just
different
hired
expert?
another analyst, which you guys are gonna meet at the end of the meeting. I think that if the legislation passes, I think that would be more consultant money.
Okay,
I don't think we need a title in-house for now, until I look at things. That should have the expertise of looking at
Depends on
validation,
how-
because I don't know
how
how,
many,
right,
how many agencies have
right.
those kinds of
So
standards?
that's gonna take a while to get the information and
Okay,
figure out.
no, but it seems to me that, in providing the EUPC with more requirements, analytic requirements, ought to come with some money to do it.
Yes,
That's
the
that's
bill
why
did,
it's simplistic on my part.
the bill did say and provide whatever funding sources
Funding
that
for,
the.
Yeah, I-
expert consultant, because it's usually experts who validate exams
Mhm.
anyway, especially for the physical testing.
Mhm.
You're gonna need someone who's like an expert in exercise physiology.
Absolutely, that was clear to me, because you can't do it without, and you do not currently have that expertise, no
Right.
question. So you can't do it. You
Right,
can't perform, if they make it a requirement, you are unable to perform it. And you will need to hire somebody to help you in performing it.
so in terms of the other hearing, which, dealt with, intro 921, I think, intro 921. I just wanna reiterate that what the commission's testimony consisted of was that, one, we already have the authority to do this. But we support the bill with the caveat that it requires or recommends or, I don't know, authorizes the EPC to audit and evaluate the validation of the testing prior to the test being administered. And then two, that DCAS provide the EPC with a list of all of the titles that require physical testing.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, we need to do it uniformly. It is not just one agency and one title. We need to see what the impact is uniformly.
right. And that's pretty much it. The next meeting is May 5th. And so,
Let me make sure I have that.
Yeah, I
I
didn't have anybody
don't
in
know
there.
why I didn't
Yeah.
have this meeting in the,
I didn't have any of the meetings for some reason, but,
really?
yeah, I
She-
don't know.
I know the executive director gave me up because it's one of the strange
Oh, I-
times when I have them.
I don't blame anybody but myself,
But
but
I
yeah,
thought that
really.
Mohini
Truly, I know it's
had
me.
your,
it wasn't
she
in
didn't
the.
send you a calendar?
No, they didn't, I didn't get calendar, I think that's what happened. is
So
that
I'm
might
gonna-
have been- But
I'm
it's
gonna
okay,
make
I got the list from her and I
Mhm.
put it in my calendar for the year, so.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Any new business? Any old business? Anything we haven't handled? I will undertake to accept a motion for adjournment.
I move that we adjourn this meeting, today, which is, Thursday.
The 200th, March 24th?
March 24th, 2016.
Okay.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Terrific.